Okay, that'll give us a couple smaller files to work with. Okay, so when you get to this point, you have a choice. You can go down the hill. Let me go back to the slides. You can go down the hill. It's a steep little trail, but it loops back to where we started. Or you can continue, you can go up the hill. We'll actually return that way. Or you can go out. And this is my favorite part of the open space, is going into the oak woodland. It's just a beautiful hillside full of some gorgeous oaks. Everything that I've seen in there, all coast live oak. I haven't seen any other oak that I've identified. If anyone knows other oaks in this property, I'd be very interested to see what they are. It's a lovely walk through here. Oh, sorry, I missed a question. Thank you from Linda. Is poison oak part of the oak family? Great question. And the danger of common names, it's not an oak at all. It is, it's in the sumac family. It's called the Anacardiaceae botanically. And that is also the same family as the lemonade berry that we saw at the base. And it's just because, sorry to go back quickly, it's because the individual leaflet can be very oak-like, but the three leaflets is, right, oaks never have the three, but each one. And I can tell you, I work out in these woodlands, and I feel like I know oaks and poison oak pretty well, and I will be out there and reach down and go, oh, what oak is this? And I have reached down and grabbed a poison oak leaf thinking it was an oak before I saw the three leaves, because the leaves can be such a dead ringer for an oak. And then poison oak and poison ivy, very close relatives. So yeah, poison ivy is most of the eastern US, same genus, and poison oak is the western. Poison oak is more shrubby. Poison ivy, like its name, is more often a vine that twirls up the trees. But poison oak can twirl up trees also. I'm sure you've all seen it grow up the trunk of a tree. It can be a shrub, it can be a vine. It's a versatile and hardy little plant. I've heard that poison oak is quite fire sensitive if you burn it a couple times. It can come back pretty vigorously from one fire. It may be that when there was more frequent burning, when Native Americans were either managing intentionally or through sort of just general fires being more frequent, and also fires being used to keep things open for hunting. Maybe there was less poison oak, because my understanding is if you burn pretty frequently, the poison oak has trouble recovering. So that may be one small thing that could happen with smaller, more frequent fires. Not the big disastrous fires, but if we have smaller, more frequent fires, we might have a little less of that. That's the least of our concerns with fires, the poison oak, but something to note. Okay, so we're going to continue into the oak woodland. Did I skip that slide? Oh, I kind of skipped this. We're here at the bench looking out. You can go down or you can go out. We're going to continue into the oak woodland. We're going to make the loop out the trail and back. Mostly coast live oak, some nice things up here, but I'll just stop and note a few trees right here, and then a couple up on the fire road coming back before we return. As we go into the oak woodland, one thing you'll see is just a few California bay. Not a lot, but it's got this beautiful long narrow leaf, and most characteristically, if you grab that leaf and rub it or break one in half and smell it, you get the really strong bay smell. And this is not the bay that you would buy in a store for cooking. That's Italian bay, but you absolutely can cook with California bay. So if you gather these leaves, not too many, but on a big tree or freshly fallen one, and let them dry out and break them up, they will perfectly good for cooking. Not quite the same flavor. Actually, for most people, probably a little too strong, a little too pungent compared to the Italian bay. Then we get up to that next beautiful viewpoint, this lovely little bench looking out towards Mount Tam. It's up there against the horizon. And right here, there's actually 3 different shrubs, which are interesting to look at. There's the numbers of the old nature trail. I've never seen the brochure. Some of the numbers are missing. I don't know if anyone still has a copy. I'd be curious to resurrect that and see what was when that was done and what was labeled there. But in this little break, there's Coyote Bush, or Coyote Brush, Baccharis. It's a native shrub all across the Bay Area, all across the hillsides. A lot of it on the headlands along the coast, the interior grasslands. It's often considered an invader because when you if you take cows off of the grassland, or if there's no fire in a grassland, or it's not mowed, coyote brush can invade quite aggressively. And once it gets in, it's quite hard to get rid of. So it's, oh, the brochure is on the Trek website. David, thank you. I obviously haven't poked around enough about that. That's great. That's getting back. I've always see those numbers and think about what's there. That just exposed my poor perusing of the Trekkers website, that I haven't looked at all the resources. So this is a native, but often it's considered a bit of a problem for management because it does take over grasslands, and in places people like to keep grasslands open, whether it's for views, for butterflies. So you even have removal projects where we're removing Baccharis for grassland management, but it's not because it's not native, it's just because the ecological effects are not compatible with some of the management goals in some of our systems. So coyote, but a very familiar plant, and a very characteristic leaf. It has little white flowers. It's actually in the sunflower family. That might not be obvious at all. That's a huge family of plants, the Asteraceae. Little white flowers late in this fall, and then wind dispersed seeds that disperse into late fall and early winter. The other thing, and I think the number 7 is actually on the olive here. There's just a couple olives up there. Now have a look. Opposite simple leaf, like the Garrya. So there's another opposite when you is olive. There's another candidate when you see that. From Europe, obviously widely used in cultivation for olive oil, and very hardy. Another hardy evergreen sclerophyll leaf from a Mediterranean climate that does really well in the summer droughts. And right next to that olive is a Cotoneaster. These are very common in a lot of parks. They're quite invasive. They're attractive. They're not an unattractive plant, but they can spread quite aggressively, and in places I think are not really seen as terribly desirable. But on the other hand, they do have a beautiful berry. Birds like them. They're actually not too distantly related to toyon. They're in the rose family, as toyon is, and share those red berries. These are so these berries I think must be last year's, because the new flowers are just opening. Mostly there's buds out there, and there's several species of Cotoneaster, and I have not yet learned to identify them all. I believe this is called the silver leaf with that silvery bottom. There's some that have larger leaves, but you'll see them all around in the parks. And then you continue walking through the lovely, you cross the 2 creeks. There's a couple of plants tucked in among there that I won't stop and look at, but there's some other sort of more shade adapted forest plants, not the big open drought adapted plants. And of course, this whole talk is trees. I love trees. I get very fascinated by trees. I haven't even touched on the wildflowers and all the understory flora. There's a whole nother talk we could have about the wildflowers and different times of year. You turn around and get up on the fire road and start your way back south, and there you get some of the most expansive views. So here we've got all the way from the coast ranges in the south beyond the city to the Golden Gate Bridge to Mount Tam in the north. Beautiful panoramas. And then you come to a couple curious, 2 curious non-native plants that I've only seen in this location within the Hillside open space. One is a loquat. This is a subtropical Asian tree with big fruits. There's also one in Canyon Trail Park. And if you look at where they live in California, they just get to the Bay Area because they're clearly not adapted to cold. They're more of a shade forest plant, big leaves. And they don't seem to spread really aggressively, because I've just seen one here, one elsewhere, but I don't see them popping up in the woodlands, and no idea of the history of how this one, particular one got here. And then you keep walking up the fire road and you come to this very distinctive stand, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with this. Right now, it's a deciduous tree, which means it drops its leaves in winter, has not yet leafed out. And it's a big grove. And in fact, when they do leaf out, and then when they turn color in fall, and they turn yellow, you can easily pick out this grove of trees from the flats. So when you're down near the BART stations or on the bike path or San Pablo, you look up at the open space and you can pick out this little patch of these trees. And what they are is an elm. So here's the leaf. This is sort of an elm leaf. Elm leaves are a little asymmetric at the base. One lobe is bigger than the other. They're alternate and they're simple. And this is a winged elm. The twigs have these protuberances. Now, there is a winged elm called Ulmus alata, but when I look at the pictures online, they don't quite look like this. So I haven't really nailed down what elm this is, and anyone who might know, I'd be very interested. The other thing you see is one big tree and then a lot of little ones around it. So presumably this one big one got up there, whether it was planted or got in just as a seed dispersed in from outside a long time ago and grew and started reproducing. And I bet all these other ones around it grew up from the seeds that it produced. So when you see sort of one big tree surrounded by a lot of little ones, often you're seeing an original colonizer that then gave rise to the whole population crowded around it. So it's beautiful right now. The leaves are just breaking out. They're bright green. So that down below they're leafed out, up above they're still bare. And it's lovely to watch these leaves develop from when they first crack open to when they get full size in summer. Come around the corner, there is the Labyrinth. I forgot the word there, on the hill. You all will know. You come down and you have the view again. You look down at the same bench, out to the bridge. And now we can complete the loop and come down this path. Now, a bit of a warning for those of you who know the trails. This is a very steep and slippery path, and almost everyone who goes up and down it, you see them slipping. So if you pick this path to go down, be very careful of your footing. And many people would probably prefer to return the way that we came up from the bench. But if you go down this way, you pick up a couple plants that you can also get to from the bottom. As you go down, you get a view of the Oakland skyline. And then you come down and you enter back into the fire road, coming back towards the entrance. And I'm just going to add 3 more things here. On the right, as you come along that path, you see a pepper tree. I actually posted this online, and there's a Brazilian pepper tree and a Peruvian pepper tree. I think it's the Peruvian, but I'm not sure. And I got a comment that it might be the Brazilian. Anyone who knows these. The important thing is it is not a pepper, and it is not particularly common or distinctively aligned, associated with Peru. So some of these common names really are just get picked up on and are, obviously it looks a little bit like peppercorns, but it's not a pepper in the sense of a peppercorn. One of these, a couple others I think that are planted along there, very common. They grow very easily. They're beautiful plants. Another compound leaf, right? But now it's an alternate compound, one leaf, one leaf, one leaf, but a long compound leaf with lots of leaflets. Turn around as you head down and you see this little grove. And one thing I didn't note during this walk are some willows. There are some willows scattered around. These are willows in here. And willows like water. And when you see willows, you definitely know that there's some water. So there's some little seep coming out of the hill. There's definitely, it's a little wet and marshy in there. And then one thing you see here, this bright red tree, and you'll see those around. That's one of the non-native cherries, one of the horticultural cherries. I think these red ones are horticultural. I'm not sure that you find the red leaf one anywhere in nature. The plums are, some of them have beautiful red plums on them right now. And you'll see these in lots of the different parks. And then turn and look towards the entrance, and you see, save one of our natives for last, which is a beautiful big Monterey pine. Monterey pines are scattered they're scattered through the oak woodland. They're all over the hills, mixed in with often we have eucalypts and Monterey pines. Another California native, but when the Spaniards arrived, it was only found right around Monterey and on the Big Sur coast, one population on one of the offshore islands. But it has turned out to be, this is one of these curiosities. It's a plant whose native range looked like it's almost disappearing. And yet it's an incredibly vigorous plant once it gets taken and planted places. So it's all over the Bay Area. So obviously whatever made it rare, in the sense of not having many native locations, was not because it couldn't grow well, just the seeds weren't getting around. It's also been taken to New Zealand, Australia, South Africa as a timber tree. In places it's been very valuable for timber, but it's also turned into a very aggressive invader. So Monterey pine in the Southern Hemisphere is considered one of their worst plant invasion problems. And it pops up and grows very well. And we'll end with one more fire adapted plant. It's another serotinous one here. So you see the cones. When you see a Monterey pine, you'll see lots of cones attached to the branches. Some of them may have cracked open in the heat, but some are more closed, like here are the younger ones. And from there, you continue the stroll out and you come right back to the entrance. Now, before I stop, and then we can chat a little bit with the size of the group we are, I just want to share a couple resources that some of you may know, and if you don't, you really might enjoy them. The first one is a website called Calflora for the California Flora, calflora.org. It was originally built by folks at the Forest Service, but it's now run as a nonprofit. It is actually based in the Bay Area. And it's one of many resources, and they all talk to each other, and the people I work with are all part of these networks of building databases. But this is, I really point to Calflora because it's quite a user-friendly one. And what you can do, you go into Calflora, calflora.org, you come up with a search page, type in any California plant with the native name or the scientific name, including any widely distributed non-native that has escaped and grows naturally. And it will just give you a whole bunch of locations, and you get a quick sense of where it grows. You'll see some pictures, you see what time of year it flowers, and then you'll get links to other websites where you can learn more about it. So we started talking about lemonade berry, and here's, this is what I mentioned, that it's native, I guess, up to San Luis Obispo. But then you see these scattered locations. Now, Calflora doesn't distinguish whether a location is native or planted. So like here in Contra Costa County, you click in there and you find a planted one out in Pinole on the waterfront somewhere, I think in a landscaping setting. So it's anything that's been picked up in different studies and different databases. So you have to be a little cautious. You can't look at this map and immediately see the native range. I mean, you can usually tell the native range because of the density of points, but you'll also see where it occurs. And you won't see every record because, of course, here we have it in El Cerrito, and that doesn't show up in Calflora. It's just the records that have shown up in different people's studies. So Calflora is a really nice resource. And the second one is, and again, some of you will know this, is Inaturalist. And I am a huge Inaturalist fan. So inaturalist.org is a phone app and a website. It's now run out of the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco, but it's gone global. It's used all over the world. You download the app on your phone, and this is what it looks like when you make an observation. You go in, you take a picture. It actually has an artificial intelligence system that will, in a matter of seconds, will actually examine the picture and suggest to you what it probably is. And it is incredibly accurate. It's frightening how accurate it can be, especially with a good picture. It captures the GPS from your phone and the time, and you save it, and you come home and you upload it, and then you can see, here's, even on my phone, when you're out walking, you can explore while you're walking. It knows where you are, and it will say, here's all of the records that we see in this area. So here's the open space, and all these INET records people have put in. And then you can go on the website, and there's lots of different ways to search it. So I took this walk yesterday, and almost all the plants I've shown you, I went and put in an INET record. And I'll put this link in the chat afterwards. If you happen to pull up that record of my INAT hike on April 25th, you'll actually see the locations of all these trees. But my records are the least of interest. There's just tons of records from tons of people. And it's not just plants, insects and birds and everything. And in honor of Earth Day, there is a city nature challenge. Maybe some of you are INAT observers and are doing this. Every INAT observation made from Friday to Monday is part of an annual event where cities all over the world compete in a very friendly way and to see how many records. And as of 9:30, just when I updated this on my PowerPoint, there were 15,000 observations in the Bay Area just since Friday morning, 2,000 different species, 1,500 people involved, and it's just a wonderful sense of community. And then if you put up an observation, other people can comment on it and tell you what they think it is, and they can correct your identifications. And then in the process, you learn, and you have a plant you don't know or an animal you don't know, and you put it up there. And sometimes literally minutes. I mean, I have put things up, and 2 minutes later, I've had someone say, oh, I think this is it, or I'm confirming your identification. So it's a really nice way to learn more biodiversity because you get feedback from folks. And just this weekend, this is going on. So that's it. And I want to thank you and thank Pam and David and all the other El Cerrito trekkers, the board, for taking a shot at an online hike, not the normal activity. I hope you are all safe. I hope you're healthy. I hope you all have a mask for when you take a walk. It's clearly a nice courtesy when we see people wearing masks and paying attention to staying 6 feet apart on the trails. Luckily, it's possible. The fire roads are, I like the fire roads a lot more than the single track trails right now. It's much easier to keep your distance and that you are enjoying our parks. So I'm going to stop, and what I'm going to do, give me 1 second. Go back to our window. I'm going to stop sharing. I don't want to spend time jumping back. I'm going to go back to our window, and we'd said till 11:30. I'm happy to sit and chat. One of the things about Zoom is it's very inconspicuous if you drop out and leave the group. It's not like walking out of a room on people, so, or walking away from a group. So if you want to go back to your second cup of coffee, you can do that. But also in a group this size, you can unmute your mics and turn on your video, and we could just have a little social chat among the folks who are here and chat about any of the things that we saw there. And I will stop the recording because I don't think we need to put our chat into posterity, but maybe these recordings can be useful for the trekkers to share in the future. So